All right, we'll give everybody just a moment to trickle in here. Hello and welcome. Seeing our first participant join us today. We'll give everyone else just a moment to trickle in. Thank you for joining us, for following us along in this series. Maybe as we wait for other people to join us, those of you tuning in from home, if you could just go ahead and give me a thumbs up using the menu at the bottom of the screen if you have attended an event before, if this is not your first event. Thank you, Lynn. Everyone else, I'm not seeing thumbs up, in which case, welcome. You're joining us late in the season. Thank you, Sheila. Hi there. So glad to have you with us today. We've had a whole series of events. If you are registered for the crash course, you will be able to access any of our past events as well, recordings online. But in the meantime, thank you for joining us here today to learn about college credit and language learning. We have a great lineup for you today. Lots of people who are excited here to have the chance to speak with you today. So hopefully we see a few more people trickle in, but in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Jessica Beatty. I'm the community manager and an event coordinator for Go Overseas and USA Gap Year Fairs. We've been running these events all across the country for the past 14 years, and COVID has really provided us the opportunity to redesign these events and make them even more accessible by offering online events for the first time ever. So thank you for joining us and being a part of this campaign. A little bit about Go Overseas. We're the host for today's event, the parent company of USA Gap Year Fairs, and you can kind of think of us like a Yelp, but for meaningful travel resources. So if you're looking to study abroad, volunteer abroad, teach abroad, intern abroad, and or take a gap year, this is a great place to start looking for resources. We host verified alumni reviews, thousands of blogs and articles, and a lot of other resources such as scholarships. So if we switch on to the next slide, thank you. You'll be able to see we offer quite a few scholarships. 1 week from today, in fact, is the deadline to apply to our $10,000 Gap Year Scholarship. We're offering 2 different awards this year. One is offered to not just students, but anyone who is a US citizen aged 14 to 25 planning to take a gap year. We're offering a grand prize of $10,000 and a second prize of $5,000. In addition, you will also receive mentorship from an expert gap year counselor, such as Marion, who's joining us today, or any of the other gap year counselors on our panel. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the link for the Gap Year Scholarship in the chat. If you haven't applied yet, this is a great place to start. It takes just a couple moments to go ahead and get started. So I'd recommend even filling out that demographic information right now on this call. Like I said, applications do close a week from today, so I'd recommend starting as soon as possible. We have only one event left. You're at our second to last event of this year, so thank you for joining us here. And in addition to college credit and language learning, which we're talking about today, you'll also have the opportunity next week to learn about gap year options in conservation, sustainability, and social justice. So I hope you'll see you there too. And of course, you can always visit us online at gooverseas.com to browse any of the most recent up-to-date gap year information at your convenience. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and lead into today's main event. We have a fantastic lineup of panelists here today. So to talk to you about, provide a bit of an overview about our topic today, I want to introduce Marion Taylor.
Thanks, Jess. I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to talk about language learning and college credit, just because language learning was really what triggered me to take a gap year way back in the mid-70s. I wanted to learn French. And I really believe once you learn one language, you can easily learn a second and third language. It just builds on itself. Language learning really is a critical skill and tool that you will use throughout your life, for whether it be for just plain travel or professional work, or for just connecting with other cultures. I have been in this business for about 10 years. This January. I am based in Boulder, Colorado, and I am owner and founder of Taylor the Gap. I am accredited by the Gap Year Association, and I myself took a gap year before college at the University of Grenoble, and then I used my French in Peace Corps for 3 years in Senegal, West Africa. And then over the course of my adult life, I realized I needed to learn Spanish, so I learned that as well. So you can see that I myself love languages. I also am a parent of 4 gap year children. They all did different things. They're all older adults now. And I have a background in social work, which really comes into play when I'm working with families, acting as a facilitator. I am a former board member of the Gap Year Association, and currently I serve on 3 committees, so I'm still very involved. As I mentioned, I was in the Peace Corps, and I also speak German, which I studied in high school as well as college, as well as picking up a local dialect in my village. So that's a little bit about me. Next. So this is just a sample of how to say hello in a variety of different languages. I just thought it was kind of fun to see this, but it's just an example. Next. So here's some gap year basics I cover every time I do a webinar, just in case any of you have not attended former webinars. A gap year is an intentional period of time set aside for a student to kind of stretch themselves, whether it be practically learning some life skills such as laundry or cooking or navigating or problem solving, or perhaps personal skills such as gaining self-awareness or gaining self-confidence or independence or resilience, or even professional skills, really dipping your toe by doing an internship or work experience to kind of test the waters as to what you're going to want to do later on as a professional. And it can be right after high school, as many of you are probably seniors now looking at this, but it could also be during college. Over the past year during COVID, we saw many college students take a leave of absence. And then I work with a number of students that have finished college, that are not quite ready for grad school, that are not quite ready to dive into the 24/7 job world, and they also are taking a gap year. So it's at any period of time, but I always recommend at least a minimum of 4 weeks to really get anything out of it. Why take a gap year is a really important question to ask yourself, to really set some goals and have an intention, really have a sense of what do you want to get out of it. Maybe sit down and set some goals. I think it's really important. Is your goal going to be learning a language, or is it going to be volunteering, or is it going to be learning more about yourself, some soft skills? And who takes a gap year really depends. Is it someone perhaps who's really burnt out from high school, from the traditional academic rigors? Or is it someone who does better learning by hands-on, experientially? Or is it someone who's not quite sure what they want to study or focus on in college? So it can be any number of those reasons. It also can be perhaps you're not quite ready, mature enough to navigate all the social and academic decisions that will be in college. So those are just 4 examples. Next. So these are different types of language options, which you will hear about today with the additional speakers. There's study abroad. You can do a gap year between high school and college. It does not necessarily need to be junior year abroad. There are very structured programs that are within universities, or you could do a language immersion program. It might be in a country where you just study every morning and then you practice in the afternoon in the market or with a homestay family, or it may be that you do 1 month long language immersion and then you do an internship every day. Usually there's an internship or a volunteer experience involved. It's a really great way to apply your language to practice. And also in language learning, you can have the choice usually of whether living with a homestay family and or being in a dorm or residence. And those are 2 different ways of providing accommodations. This past year with COVID, we saw a lot of online language apps. They were really quite creative. The typical Duolingo and Babbel, but then there were also tandem conversations. You could have a conversation with someone in Guatemala while you're sitting in your living room. So it was really quite creative. And then independent travel. When my son was studying abroad, he traveled to 12 different countries. And when I came to visit him, I had to bone up on my German and my French because we went to Berlin and Normandy. So that was a chance for independent travel. So those are also a way to use languages. Next. So when you're choosing a language, make sure obviously that you want to know what language you're going to choose. Are you going to learn a new language? Or are you going to really try to practice speaking? Perhaps you studied a language for 3 or 4 years in high school. So that's an obvious thing. Find out what level. It's really important when you are arriving in a country, usually the program will test you. Are you a beginner? Are you intermediate? Or are you advanced? That's important too. And then destination, be sure that you're comfortable. Do you want to be in more of a first world country setting, such as a Spain? Or are you okay perhaps to go to a third world country, such as down in Peru or Bolivia? Are you okay to go to France? Or are you okay to go to Togo or Senegal, where French is also spoken? So make sure you know what your comfort level is. Also, really pay attention to the safety, what their COVID protocols are, and what the political stability is in that country. Make sure you have some goals. Are you really trying to become fluent, perhaps wanting to pass the foreign service exam, or are you just wanting to become conversational? Those are kind of things that you need to think about. And do you do better in a language lab type format, which is intensive with maybe one-on-one with an instructor? Or are you better off perhaps having a group setting and then going out to the marketplace to practice your language? Those are all important things to really assess. And I always recommend that you talk to 2 or 3 recent alumni that have participated in the language program. They can tell you their high points, their low points, what they thought of that particular program. Also kind of consider what is important to you. Do you want to be in a structured language program, or are you better off where it's less structured? And then also consider, are you okay if you're in a study abroad program that has junior or sophomores or seniors in your program? Or would you rather be with gap aged 18, 19-year-old only? Next. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about college credit. What I always recommend off the first hand is to ask your future college, if you're so lucky enough to go to defer, do or will they accept credit from another academic institution? And will they accept the credits from that particular college program and or gap year program that is college accredited? It's really helpful. It can offset tuition costs if they do allow credit. You can test out of the language requirement when you get to college. You can participate in language dorms, and it is a life skill, as I mentioned earlier, that you will take you with you forever. However, it can also kind of present some challenges. You may arrive and you get credit for it, but you're more than a freshman. So you may have trouble with transfer status. You may not be able to be placed in a freshman dorm, or they may move you into second semester. And so you miss out on the orientation. So those are a couple of the cons. One good thing is that if your language program is college accredited, then you can use your 529 savings funds to pay for it. Gap Year Association also offers a college credit through Portland State University if the Gap Year program is an international accredited program. And then lastly, a lot of the programs that you'll be hearing from today are college accredited. So that's really helpful. Next. So we know this past year, 2020, from March through the summer, most international language programs closed down. Many pivoted and became offered online learning apps. Many even offered volunteer and internships online. It was quite amazing. Some students chose to get their teaching English as a foreign language certification, which is over 120 hours. I had one that did that in January, and she's going to be now using that in May down in Guatemala. And then American Sign Language was another offer. But now that borders are reopening, we're seeing more and more students taking a look at the fall for international programs. Israel, Ireland, Morocco, Peru, Ecuador, Galapagos included in that. As Semester will talk about that. They've been operating this whole time throughout COVID. So there are a lot more international borders opening. And I think as more and more countries receive vaccinations, I think it will be even more so. So with that, I think I have finished and I will turn it over.
Thank you, Marian. That was a very informative overview and a great introduction to the topic. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce some of the fabulous program providers that we have here today, who are all very excited to talk to you, not only about their programs, but about the industry and this theme of a gap year in general. So we're going to run through the structure of this. It's a little bit different than any of the other events that we may have run so far. I'm going to host kind of a guided discussion where I'll be asking each of the program providers to answer specific kind of frequently asked questions that we get during these events. And then after the fact, we'll open up the floor to audience Q&A. So if you're tuning in from home and you have any questions now or at any point through the rest of the event, do feel free to use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and submit your questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the Q&A portion. So with that, we'll go ahead and introduce Alex from Amigos. Alex,
hello.
Your interview pitch here, you're welcome to.
I'm sorry, say that again.
If you want to give kind of a brief overview, elevator pitch of your program, feel free.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are operating GAP programs in Costa Rica and Colorado this year, and for the spring of 2022, we'll be in Ecuador as well as Costa Rica and Colorado. For the purpose of this, presentation, we are essentially our language is Spanish, apart from English, and we generally have operated in Latin America. 55 years of experience doing it. This year, obviously, is a little bit different. And in order to protect our kind of partner communities, all of our programs are sort of pod-based models, but the language component is still a super important component. And so we have Latin American youth that are participating at least 2, sometimes more, in every single one of our programs, as well as language classes, interaction with community, safe and socially distanced throughout the programming. So that's a little bit about us.
Excellent, thank you. Let's introduce the next speaker. William.
Hi, my name's Kara. I'm replacing William tonight, but I'm one of the study abroad advisors. So I'm happy to be here, answer all of the questions. A little bit about EF Language Campuses. So we are a language immersion program that also focuses a lot on cultural exchange. We do have 7 different languages in 8 different countries around the world, and super flexible program options. So you can really cater it to either that gap semester, or if, say, you wanted to take summer classes, that's something that we would absolutely be able to offer for you. Right now, we've been fortunate enough to have students who have been traveling since the beginning of this year to multiple different countries, obviously with certain restrictions and requirements that are needed. But it is something that we are really positive and optimistic on moving forward, that we will have students traveling into the summer and moving into the fall. We do have college credit offered, which I know is something that students are looking for. So happy to go into that. But yeah, that's great. Happy to be here with you all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and introduce Julia.
Mute. There we are. Hi guys. So Sea Semester is a program focused on studying the world's oceans. So it's a very hands-on and research-intensive program. So students participate in research projects while they also sail on board a tall ship as an active crew member on board. So it's a great opportunity for students who want to earn college credit, learn more about the world's oceans, and be part of an intentional community with a common goal, working and living on board a tall ship.
Very exciting. I think next up we have Lainey.
Yay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So Verto is, we offer affordable and travel-based first semester, first full year of college. So we are a fully accredited college semester, but it's really focused on experiential courses and cultural immersion and self-discovery. So students are earning 16 college credits. They count towards graduation requirements. And we partner with a lot of universities as well, which is cool. As far as our language aspect, so we have 6 different locations. Two of them, are Spanish speaking, and they have Spanish language options. We have a Spanish 101, 102, and 201 options. So those are in Costa Rica as well as Spain. We also do have a semester in Italy that doesn't have an Italian language course yet. We should be adding that, but there is options for students to do that on the side as well. Currently, we're running 4 of our 6 semester locations this spring. And then this fall, we are planning to run all 6 of our semesters.
Fabulous. I know that's really exciting to be running those programs again. And last up, we have Hillary, who will be introducing Where There Be Dragons.
Hey everyone, my name is Hillary. At Dragons, we run immersive, responsible, and educational travel programs. We do offer both summer and gap semester courses. Until COVID, really our focus was purely international. It's been a bit of a silver lining for us to be able to kind of unroll domestic options. So we've had courses kind of in the West in the field, both this past fall and current spring, and we'll have domestic options available as well this coming summer. But our semesters are 3 months. You can receive college credit on all of the semester courses, kind of like Marian mentioned earlier. We partner with GYA for students to receive college credit through Portland State University. And all courses also have a language component. All courses have 9 components, one of which is language. Some courses just have more of a language focus than others. So if you're super stoked on language, you want that to be an emphasis, there are gap semester options where language is a specific focus. But regardless, obviously being abroad and international, language is a part of all of our courses. And for this upcoming summer, just to give you a sense of where we're able to operate, Nepal, Peru, Bolivia, and Guatemala are all courses we're planning to run. And then we're hoping that this coming fall and spring will kind of open up a variety of options, because we do operate courses in a lot of other countries that we just haven't been able to run with COVID, but it does seem to be trending in a positive direction.
Great, thank you to everyone for sharing. So now that we have a bit of an idea of who we have speaking here with us today, we're going to move into some FAQs, some common questions that we get asked and the answers therein. So this first question here is for Alex. Alex, can you tell us a little bit about what a student can expect on a program, and is there sort of a typical day on an Amigos program?
Yeah, there's what you can expect on sort of a traditional Amigos program is sort of several different things, right? One is our programs are service-based. So when we think about service, it's not just like a, you take a brick and you build sort of a well necessarily, but it's partly the doing, but it's as much about learning about ethical service design, how to apply cultural humility to service projects, and how to ensure that service projects are community-led. And so our activities tend to kind of orient around that sort of work with the community. As far as language, we have language classes kind of like built into curriculum on all of our projects. In a traditional year, it would be sort of a big part of that is full immersion with a homestay. During COVID, it looks more like intensive Spanish classes during the day, 2 days a week. A traditional day would be sort of, wake up, have breakfast. After breakfast, you have some time to either kind of like do a course, have a speaker, potentially go to your service project, come back, have lunch. Afternoon, there is either going to be activities that, around the service project, or potentially some like more fun kind of like excursion type activities. And then in the evening, oftentimes you will either have another round of language immersion, or potentially you would just have sort of like relaxation and fun time. Days sort of vary quite a bit, but again, really oriented around like service learning, building up those skills and sort of project management skills, so that not only are you kind of like doing something when you're there, but also, building those skills so that when you come home, you're kind of equipped to help affect change in your own community.
Great, thank you so much for sharing your insight with that. This next question is for Kara. Kara, can you tell us a little bit about what a student might need to know before attending one of your programs? Do you offer accommodation for students at all different levels, and is there any sort of GPA requirement?
Yeah, awesome question. So for our program, basically all the student needs to know is where they're looking to go and when they're looking to go. We are open to all levels. So students who are complete beginners, in the middle, or somewhere that's in an advanced level are all able to participate in our program. We don't have any prerequisites, so you don't have to have any prior knowledge of the language. However, if you do, we have an assessment test to make sure you're placed exactly where you need to be. So that wouldn't be an issue. We also don't have any GPA requirements. We only have certain age requirements. For some locations, it's 13 plus, for some it's 16 plus. Other than that, there really aren't too many restrictions for participating in one of our programs. I think more of the technical aspects that I always like to remind students is make sure you have a passport as one of the things that you do need before going on a study abroad program, as well as double check on the visa requirements based on the length of your course. Sometimes, especially with our programs, the shorter term courses don't require a visa, but the GAP programs do. So you just speak with your advisor, they'll be able to help you out, get set up with all of that, and be able to move forward.
Excellent. That's a great foundation and a great starting point for anyone who's considering those programs. So Julia, I'll pass to you next and ask, what type of students do you typically see enroll, and how do students receive college credit?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So I'll start with the easy thing, how students receive credit. So we are, our school of record is Boston University. So every student who completes one of our credit gap year programs receives a BU transcript that will transfer to most American universities, provided that students have sought approval beforehand for the school they've deferred from, of course. In terms of what kind of students we enroll, we are an outdoor education focused program. So we really do enroll adventurous students who enjoy being outdoors, who enjoy things like backpacking, sailing, kayaking. So a lot of just students who enjoy being outdoors and students who enjoy doing hands-on learning. So each of our students are active crew members on board the ship. So they learn how to do the sails, they learn how to cook the meals, they learn how to steer the ship. And they also learn all there is to know about the science that's happening on board. So they're doing net tows, they're sampling the water, and then they're processing the samples and doing the research work as well. So it's we tend to get adventurous hands-on learners who are passionate about the ocean and the environment and want to learn more about it.
Fantastic. I think adventurous and hands-on learners describes a lot of students who choose to take gap time. So perfect fit. All right, so next up, we'll go ahead and ask this question for Lainey. Lainey, can you tell us a bit about your admissions process and what does that timeline look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So Verto, our school of record is Richard Bland College of William and Mary. So every student that's going through Verto is getting their transcript from RBC. So because of that, we do have a GPA minimum, it's 2.5. The application process, I think, is pretty awesome. So it's a free and non-binding application. So it's up on our website. It's pretty similar to a college application. We are test optional, but it's a great option for students to even like starting off as juniors or prior to really just like get in that application, keep that in their back pocket as they're navigating the rest of high school or the whole college process. So when you apply to Verto, aside from our 2-page application, we do prioritize having conversations with our students and their families. So we do review our students holistically. It's a very important piece because we're really shaping these small groups of students and we want to make sure everybody's there for the right reason. Aside from the application and the interview, for lack of a better term, we do require a transcript and a personal statement. When students are applying to Verto, because we have 60 partner universities, students can actually apply to up to 5 of our partner colleges through us. So we have a college counseling team on our staff, and essentially we do that hard work for the students. So if they say, I want to apply to these 3, 4, 5 schools. We'll tell them any extra documents they might need, like if those colleges are maybe not test optional. We'll gather all of those and send them off to the universities. So that's kind of, if a student is interested in applying to our partner schools, that's that aspect, but students aren't required to at all. We do have rolling admissions. So we do have students starting to apply as soon as junior year. We usually start working with them the summer after their junior year. And the scholarships and grants that we offer, we do tell students the earlier the better. We don't have hard cutoff deadlines, but it is a limited pool. So yeah, earlier the better. And often we do have like early enrollment scholarships in the fall and spring that we offer, but hard and fast, our deadlines for enrolling for the fall are in June 1st. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Great. Thanks so much, Lainey. I think you touched on one really important point, which is that, of course, Virto and other organizations offer a lot of scholarships as well. So if you have applied to the Go Overseas Scholarship or you are interested in other scholarships as well, do look into those. I'm sure those deadlines are fast approaching, but there are many, many different options out there for financial aid. You can actually view a list of additional scholarships offered by all of these organizations and all of the other participating organizations within this campaign. If you click on the scholarship link that I have put in the chat already, there's a block there called additional scholarships that you'll be able to reference. So I would recommend doing that if you're curious. Last question that I have here, I'm gonna go ahead and pitch it to Hillary, excuse me. Hillary, can you tell us a bit about how these types of programs benefit students after the gap year is over? What are the biggest takeaways for students?
For sure. So many. And there are so many different forms that gap years can take. And I think that regardless of what students opt for, they see a lot of the same benefits. So I'd kind of categorize them both in the personal and professional realm and in the intersection of the two. So obviously with any international program, increased language fluency is a huge plus for so many reasons. But then beyond that, students report, regardless of what they've done, a really large boost in motivation, renewed interests and passions, and felt like if they did choose school after, they really took advantage of different clubs and activities. And I think that colleges report oftentimes students who took gap years are very much leaders on campus. And I think for me personally, I had a positive college experience. I didn't take a gap year, but it did take me probably a solid 2 years to kind of feel like I finally found my niche at college and figured out what I wanted to do and to take advantage of a lot of those things. So thinking about being able to hop into those things right away is definitely appealing. But beyond that, definitely increased confidence, maturity, reflection, and personal communication skills. And we don't expect students to come away of a gap year knowing exactly who they are and what they want to do, but it's definitely kind of like some trajectory in navigating all of that. And then for students who are in school afterwards, they often have higher GPAs than their peers. And for students who go right to the workforce or workforce after school, feel that they're more employable, also see more satisfaction out of jobs that they've had. Yeah, so definitely students are psyched to learn, ready to learn, kind of know a bit more about who they are and what they want to do.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your insight there. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move into the audience Q&A. We've had just a couple questions come through, so consider this your last call. If you have any other burning questions that have come up over the course of this discussion, do feel free to submit another question. There was one that I see that Alex, you've gone ahead and answered in the chat, which is great, but I do want to provide other providers an opportunity to answer that question as well. So there's a student here asking, will I be considered a gap year student if I'm taking a year off between my bachelor's and master's degrees? Alex offered his age range, but if anybody else wants to go ahead and add their opinion to that, do feel free to answer that now. Marian, maybe you can provide some insight.
Yeah, I think where that term gap year student comes into play is oftentimes there are gap year programs that are very age specific for 17, 18, 19-year-olds for just that gap year right after high school. But I work with a lot of students between college and graduate school or jobs. And so I consider them gap year students. But what's available is a little bit different. You have to look a little bit differently than perhaps those programs that are more oriented towards recent high school grads.
Great. I just want to offer an opportunity for any of the other providers to add anything if they felt inclined. All right, it looks like we're good to move on from that one. Thank you. Another question that came through in the chat, with college credit, can families use their 529s? Marion's got ahead and answered and said yes, as long as the gap year program is accredited through the college. So maybe any of the providers who do accept 529s, if you want to just go ahead and verbally confirm that.
Yes, Verto does.
Thanks, Lainey.
Dragons does as well, but we also have seen ultimately sometimes it's up to the provider like what they allow 529 funds to be used for, and I think very often having the option of taking college credit makes it almost a definite yes. But I've definitely seen like 529 kind of all over the place with you know, what they allow funds to be used for.
Great, that's very helpful to know.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would say is my understanding is that with the tax law that changed a few years ago, there was some changes, or rather just a little more ambiguity around the use of the 529 funds, which is something that in some respects gives a little more flexibility, but I would sort of, we accept kind of 529 funds primarily for paying for the college credits that you'll be earning. But I believe that in general, our program costs are not typically covered through, for Amigo specifically, through the 529 funds, though there is potentially some wiggle room around like equipment and other things like that. But probably talk to your financial advisor before necessarily proceeding with any of that advice. But definitely for the credit cost of the college credits, you can use it.
Good to know. All right, so I'll move on. We have a big question here. What's a great way or the best way to plan a gap year? So I'm going to go ahead and interject there really quickly and just say we've offered whole webinars on this subject. You can find these listed on the USA Gap Year Fair's YouTube. If you're registered for the crash course, they would be, the link to that recording would be included within the crash course weekly digest emails that I've been sending. Or if you can't find either of those options, do feel free to just go ahead and shoot me an email at fairs@gooverseas.com, and I'd be happy to provide you with that as well. But in the meantime, since we are all on this call together, Marion, if you want to give maybe like very brief lightning round, like bullet points of the best way to plan a gap year.
The best way to plan a gap year is to start maybe the summer of junior year, and at least kind of talk about what your intentions, what your goals are. Think to yourself, you know, kind of your overall plan, and then apply to colleges if you're lucky enough to go to college in the fall, and then really take advantage of the gap year fairs January through March. Visit them, talk to staff members, and then sit down with your parents, talk about budget, goals, and maybe map it out time-wise. And then really from March to June are generally the gap year program fall enrollment periods. Then notify your college, make sure they allow deferments, make sure you know if they need a full narrative or just a check in the box, and when that deadline is, May 1st, June 1st, and went as late as July 15th last year. And then make sure you apply and within their deadline as well. That's kind of a brief overview.
Great. And Marion, I believe you offer free consultations as well, correct?
For 45 minutes, the first front end, yeah.
Great. So if any of you do have follow-up questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to Marion as well. So with that, I am going to go ahead and hand us off. It looks like we've worked through our questions today. So I'm going to go ahead and thank the providers for joining us. They're going to go ahead and hop off now. But if you would like to speak with any of them individually, we're going to be dropping a link for just a moment where you can access them individually in private Zoom rooms to ask one-on-one questions and have conversations with them, get to know them a little bit better. So they will be sticking around for the next 15 or 30 minutes. And I'll drop that link in just a moment. So thank you to Alex, Kara, Julia, Lainey, and Hillary. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so moving on, we're gonna just review a couple more resources. As I said before, we have just one event left. So if you found today's event helpful and you or your gap year student is also interested in conservation, sustainability, and or social justice, do feel free to join us for that as well. We also have the scholarship deadline coming up this Thursday. I'll drop the link for the scholarship one more time in the chat in case you joined us late today. It is for $10,000 open to US citizens taking gap time in the next academic year between the ages of 14 and 25. No student requirements, no GPA requirements. We just want to hear about why you want to take gap time. So you have one more week to complete that application. The deadline is April 15th, and we hope that we'll see your application come through. So moving on to our next and second to last slide there, we're going to move into now what's called a mini fair. So maybe you've joined us for a fair before, or maybe this has been your first event. But if you would like to talk to any of the programs that have been invited here today presenting, or if you'd like to meet with Marian and set up a consultation, we're going to share a link right now that's going to take you to a page that allows you to click off from a PDF into Zoom rooms to meet with any of those providers. So if we pull up that last slide to get an example of the page, you're not going to be able to click on the screen in the Zoom call, but I've just right now sent a link. It says attendee access to mini fair. And there's a link there to a PDF. So when you click on that link, it should open up the page that you see on your screen, and you'll be able to click then any of those lines that say click here to join info session and click off to the provider info sessions. So if you have any last minute questions for me, you are welcome to ask me now. If not, this call will close in just about a minute. So I'd recommend that anybody who wants to attend an info session, make sure you open that link, that attendee access to mini fair that's in the chat box. Go ahead and open that up now because the chat will disappear when I close this call. Thank you all for joining us here today. It's always great to see you. We have just one more event this year, and I hope we'll see you there as well. But if not, thanks for being a part of this campaign and the season. Great evening.